was thinking about gender inequality in the workplace the other day and decided I'd look back a little further. Surely if I looked past the last 50 years, I would find that we've just about balanced the scales from the equal rights struggles of the 1960s and 70s. Just like we finally narrowed the wage gap between men and women. Surely we've almost achieved parity in leadership. Surely I would find in the last few years that we've come a long way together. Surely. Can you feel where this is going? Right? The first woman to run a Fortune 500 company was Katharine Graham. She became chief executive officer of the Washington Post newspaper in 1972. And that was almost 50 years ago. And since then, women have just started zooming up through the hole in that glass ceiling, right? Right. Of the Fortune 500 companies as of May this year, a whopping 24 of them were women, and a mere 476 were men. 24. That's 4.8%. And it's almost as many as there were in 2017 when we broke the record for female executives with 32. So, if we can just keep losing 8 every year, then we'll be at 0 by 2022, exactly 50 years after Katharine Graham. And the only way there'll be to go is up, right? I know. It's awful. And the question is, why? Obviously, there's something in corporate culture at play here. Companies say they support women. They say they have a women's group, but do they fund that group? Or is it just networking events and happy hours? Is there mentorship? Do the companies invest in professional development for these women? Is there executive sponsorship where the leaders approve bringing in thought leaders and talents in their fields? Or do they just talk a good game? Yep, we have a women's group, but do nothing to advance its purpose. Maybe they're using it as a recruiting tool. Bring more women in. And that's not bad. But if women come and find there's no real support, they're going to feel boxed in. So obviously for a woman to run the place is for her to be outside the box. But what is the box? Isn't it just a set of expectations of women's behavior and a fear of what happens if women defy that? Now this goes back a long way. In Greek mythology, the first human being made by the gods from the earth was Pandora. And she was given gifts by each god and goddess of Olympus. And these were human traits, both good and evil, to give her a full 360-degree personality. Now, in the original story, Pandora kept these gifts in a jar. But an early translator, Erasmus, confused the word for jar with the word for box. Not a big deal, but it just goes to show you can't let a man tell women's stories because they just get stuff wrong, right? But whether it's a jar or a box or a Prada bag, what happens when Pandora opens it and releases her gifts into the world? All hell breaks loose, right? Well, I'm not the first woman to observe that corporations, these castles of patriarchy, need a little hell breaking loose. The world's boardrooms are in dire need of disruption. And what women are holding back, the gifts that we're not giving and the box that we're keeping that tight lid on, that disruption can turn a company upside down. As a matter of fact, women acting outside the box are so disruptive that companies with female CEOs consistently outperform companies with male CEOs. Now, in one famous study, firms that were led by women, and that's with female CEOs, in 44% of the 25 companies with the highest percentage of female leaders earned more than twice the rate of return on assets and greater than 5% return on equity than the top 400 largest companies that were publicly traded. All this is boring. We know this. We know that companies that are headed by women produce well. But the question is, again, why? I'd like to suggest that it's not just the woman running the place, it's the place. It's the culture of companies that give women the ability to express all parts of their personality. Corporations that are open to women not just thinking, but acting outside the box. But this is where our own personal accountability comes in, because it's not just others' opinions of ourselves, it's our own opinion of ourself. We each have a personality box, and most of us, we only let our colleagues see the outside of it. And we dress it up nicely, and we keep it clean and shiny. But do you ever let people sit on it or shove it into a corner? Some of us allow people to do that. Think of this as the box where you keep all that stuff that adults, especially our parents, discouraged in us when we were young. Sometimes we were scolded for expressions of ourself. For instance, our boisterousness, our anger, our strong opinions, our rule breaking, and we put all of that down into the box. Now, if we let that out at work, will there be terrible consequences? In some companies, the answer to that question is yes. Now, as women, we're often given these subtle messages every day that we don't add up, that we're out of our league, that we're in over our heads, that we're being too emotional, that sometimes we jump to conclusions. But I'm telling you that lean in was just the tip of the iceberg. What's under the surface, what's hidden, what's latent and lurking that we've pushed down into the box, that is where the real power, the real impact, and the real influence truly is. To claim it, though, means letting go of our own self-construct of who we have to be at work. So what I'm really saying is, stop being yourself. And I know I'm saying this at a time when authenticity is really appreciated, not just for brands or for communications, but for people too. But what I'm saying is, there are other selves in you. Besides the self that we feel like we have to be at work, there are other selves in us. And maybe we feel like they're weaknesses because we haven't developed them much. But maybe a lot of these selves are just selves that don't appear at work. For instance, if you're a parent, think about how you react when your teenager doesn't do the thing that you have asked them time and time and time again to do. If you're a sports fan, think of how fierce your loyalty is when it's in full expression. If you're a music lover, is there a you that sings at the top of her lungs on the ride to work? When you get there, where does that you go? Do you stuff her into a backpack and throw her over your shoulder with all those other selves hanging off? Isn't that heavy? And when you get to work and you take out your laptop or go to get your lunch, it's really easy for the joy of that you to stay stuffed inside. A few months back, I was at a conference, and I'm walking down one of these huge convention halls with another woman, and she was having a really rough day. She was pretty sad, and I wanted to do something to cheer her up. So I thought, I know, I'll sing for her, right? So out of the blue, I started belting out the Beach Boys. And she laughed and thought it was funny, which is what I wanted. But what really surprised me were other people's reaction to this. Some people acted like they didn't see me. I am 6 feet tall, singing the Beach Boys. Of course they saw me, right? Some people laughed and clapped and gave me the thumbs up. But one woman, she walks up to me and she said, Barb, I had no idea you could sing. You really ought to do that more often. Wouldn't it be nice if we were older and we didn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? Oh, wouldn't it be nice? Thank you. Let's just say that's not a self that comes out at work very often, okay? Now, obviously, we can't walk around like we're rock stars all the time. But what is my voice? That's the question. And if I were to ask other people what you're like, what would they say? Would they say, oh, they're a very nice person. They support the company, right? They're good team players, and they have a great attitude. And you know, those are wonderful qualities. Don't ever lose them. But do you sometimes feel exploited for that? Do people sometimes run over you because they can? Do people sometimes just sit down on your ideas and squelch the heck out of them? Stop being yourself. Be bold. Be audacious. Whatever you feel like your personality is at work, the opposite is probably true as well. Maybe you're not assertive and outspoken, but you feel like you need to be to have your voice be heard and have people take you seriously. Maybe you are extremely direct and extremely outspoken, but feel like you shouldn't be because sometimes that's not an appreciated thing for women in the workplace. Maybe you're a risk taker. Maybe you're not the person that says yes, and you're the person that says hell no. When we use all 360 degrees of our personality, we draw people to us, and it resonates with people that we would never, ever probably come in contact with. It's magnetic. And we get less pushback from other people. It resonates. Less pushback from other people. And you know, when we get that less pushback, I'm just going to ask you, Mary, what is it like when you get less pushback from other people? Yes, on that, you are looking at that. What does it tell you? Yes, right there. What does it say? Exactly. We become unstoppable. We become unstoppable because we have to look at this as, Mary, say that. We become unstoppable because, are you there? This is a plant. We become unstoppable because, oops, do you have that? That's right. We become unstoppable because to us, when we use that 360 degrees of our personality, we can unscrew the lid to that jar. We can pop open that box. Come on, Pandoras, open it up. And if we are Pandoras, remember that what is in here are divine gifts. The most ancient images of Pandora are of a strong woman coming out of the earth with her arms upstretched to the heavens. This is Pandora, the all-giver, not just the all-gifted. So what would it like? What would it look like to give it all at work? I think of it as one of those Russian nesting dolls, but one that defies physics. Because instead of each doll getting progressively smaller, like you would expect, just the opposite. Each doll gets progressively bigger. It's a bigger, better, more full of possibility you. And if all of this just seems like vague encouragement that isn't really actionable, maybe you should think of it in the third person. Not as you, but as her. That amazing woman. The woman who's your best friend, your biggest fan. The woman who has your back because you've been carrying her back there since you were little. It's up to you. Because when you bring that amazing woman out, it is your decision who she is, right? Who is she? It's a question that we can ask and answer every day, because beneath that facade of who we have to be to navigate the corporate power structures, and inside that self-contained part of who we have to be is an amazing woman. When you knock on the top of that box, who comes out when you ask her to work? Embrace her. Value her uniqueness. And what about the little hers? Your daughters, your sisters, your neighbors. What about them? And I'm going to suggest to you to start now and help them grow in to strong, confident, and independent young women who value all of their true hers. Give other women an arm up. Women of every age and every background, because we need to bridge that for all women. And when we do, we can work together to get her to the place where she belongs. And where is that? It's in the executive's chair. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.